Welcome to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, where we discuss an independent approach to the art of cinema and explore the subtext of various featured films. My name is Peter O'Brien, and I am an independent filmmaker, author, and musician.
My name is Steven Bendler. I'm a film and stage actor and a pop culture enthusiast.
I'm Anne Milleville, a French screenwriter and producer.
This week's VHS selection was Seven Samurai from 1954, directed by Akira Kurosawa. And once again, if you have not seen Seven Samurai, please head over to the Visually Hidden YouTube channel. Subscribe so you don't miss any future selections. Check out the video, watch the film, and come on back to the podcast because we will be discussing it openly with spoilers. Here we go. Seven Samurai is one of those films that has a huge reputation and a huge legacy. I remember being like a small child and looking at top 10 lists of the best films ever or the highest rated films. Of course, when I was a kid, it was a very different list than it is today, but there was one film that was always among the top 10, and the top 10 consisted of films like The Godfather, Star Wars,
Citizen Kane,
12 Angry Men, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And among these films, there was this one movie that was written in a language I didn't understand. And I looked it up, and it was Seven Samurai, and it was always among the top 10 highest rated films ever. I looked into it as a kid, and it's a 3.5-hour movie in black and white in Japanese, which is not the best selling point for a 10-year-old child who's, in love with film. And like I loved Godzilla, which was the same year, same studio, but 3.5 hours, that was a tough pill because you don't really understand time when you're a kid. You just see these big numbers and you think of things. You don't understand it in terms of like, the value of it. So for me, I kind of steered clear of this film for a while, and I didn't see it in its entirety until I was probably about 18 years old. A friend of mine loaned me the DVD from the Criterion Collection. And like I said in the video, I felt stupid after watching this the first time because it really is an awesome film. And so I guess I'm just curious, what were your expectations going into this movie? Because for me, my only expectation was I'm going to see a great movie. It's on this list. It has to be as good as all of these other movies. So that was my only expectation. But for you guys coming at it much later and off of the VHS video, what was your expectation, Stephen?
Unfortunately for me, it was very high because, like you said, the aura surrounding this film for so long. And again, I had the same issue, growing up, loved movies, 3.5-hour movie, black and white and Japanese subtitles, didn't really pique my interest. I'm like, I could wait on that one. And I waited, obviously, until now to see this. And I really enjoyed the movie, but I feel like I enjoyed the film. I can see the influence on several things. I get why people enjoy it so much. But just because of that hype that it had, something inside of me makes me feel like I wasn't satisfied with it. And then when I go back and think about the film, I kind of was satisfied. But just because of that expectation, it leaves this weird thing where I feel like I'm unfulfilled, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, that's kind of a byproduct of our culture and of media. Like a lot of things just get overhyped, and then like it builds up your expectations because you're an individual, right? And you have your own ideas about what's amazing and what's great. And then everybody's telling you, oh, it's great. Okay, this must be the best fucking thing ever made. I can't wait. Like I want to see the light, And then you go and you watch it and it's like, well, yeah, that is awesome. But that's not like what was going on in my mind. Now your expectations are crushed. So yeah, that's one reason why it's like, I don't like to wait too long, but I also don't like to like come into things with the hype wave. Yeah. And this one, again, it just has that, it's 70 years of like, it's basically a fucking tsunami right now of this legacy just washing over people.
It really is a killer. The hype train is really a killer.
And what were your expectations going into this film? Because you're not only a cinemaphile, but you're also an international cinemaphile. You experience films of the world in a way that Stephen and I don't, because we come from the filmmaking capital of the world, not Hollywood specifically, but the United States. That is kind of our chief export here now, is entertainment. Mm-hmm. And you come from Paris from France, and you live in Europe, and you experience all these different films from around the world. And so, what were your expectations going into Seven Samurai, a 70-year-old Japanese film?
So yeah, I didn't know much about this movie before watching it, but I love watching foreign movies. Yeah, I know that people are really enthusiastic about this film. That's all I know about it, but I didn't know why. So at first, I was really reluctant to watch it because you know that I don't like black and white movies, but I had a good experience with the Charlie Chaplin movie we talked about in a previous episode. But yeah, I'm always reluctant to black and white. And then you told me that the movie is more than 3 hours. So I was really, really reluctant. I love Japanese movies. I think I talked about Battle Royale. It's one of my favorite movies. And recently I watched a Japanese movies in theater in Paris. So yeah, I'm used to watch Japanese movies. And I must say this one did not disappoint me. It's a really good surprise. I think it's a mind-blowing experience when you think it was made in the 50s, because you see nowadays movies that are really less quality than this one. So really impressive. Really, when you think it was made in the 50s, it's wow. I can't say anything else. I don't know much about Akira Kurosawa, the director. I don't know much about him, but I heard this is a famous guy. Maybe you can tell us more about him, but I would be curious now to watch more about him.
Yeah, he is basically like the Steven Spielberg of post World War II Japanese cinema.
Okay.
You know, he's the guy. I mean, there are other guys, but he's kind of the most internationally renowned Japanese filmmaker. And a lot of his films have gone on to be either remade or they have a lot of accolades. A lot of cinematic gold can be mined from his filmography.
Yeah, I was wondering why the movie is in black and white. Maybe you know, because in the 50s, at the end of the 50s, I think colored movies were already on, right? So I guess it's on purpose that the movie is in black and white.
Yeah, no, it was a decision that they made, but also black and white film at that time was cheaper. This film, you watched it, you see the scope of it. To shoot this film in color would probably double, maybe even triple the budget at the time. And honestly, the more black and white films you watch, the less you see it. You know, we've watched in this podcast series On the Waterfront, City Lights, It's a Wonderful Life. You know, when you think of those movies, do you see them in black and white, or do you just see the feelings that you got watching them?
That's funny you're asking me, because I was thinking, oh yeah, we already saw many movies in black and white, and I just remembered Charlie Chaplin when I was talking about it. So you're right. I forgot they were in black and white. And it probably helped the cinematography also, because when you watch the fight scenes, for example, I think it looked great in black and white. Maybe in color it would have been more confusing. So maybe that's also the reasons why it was in black and white. You have many wide shots for the fights, and it adds something to the quality of the movie. In my opinion, the black and white helps in those scenes.
Yeah, and I love black and white. I love contrast, like lights and darks, next to or near each other. It just makes for, I think, some more striking visuals in a lot of ways. So for me, the black and white was never an issue. For me, it was really just the time commitment. And once you get past that, it's really like, oh, wow. That's pretty fantastic. And I don't know that it's so much hype at this point for the film as much as it is legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, the origins and the history, I think, is also just a really kind of fascinating approach to a story. This film, they shot this in early 1954, and then I think it came out around the summertime of 1954. And in 1954 in Japan, I mean, we're like a decade past World War II. Just coming off of like that experience as a country, this film really does delve into those things in a very kind of clever and creative and inspiring kind of a way. It takes place in feudal Japan, which was a totally different time in history. But then after World War II, we had the US occupation of Japan. And so just to kind of re-establish their identity through their history and through cinema, I think that's another reason why this film is carrying the legacy that it does, and what it's done for their culture.
Yeah, that was one question as I was watching it that popped up in my mind. I wonder how this was received at the time based on the real life, events that had just taken place. When you're at war with somebody or you're at odds with somebody, you tend to demonize that person because I think it makes it a little bit easier to hate them or to fight them or to do whatever you need to do. And then to see a story like this that's kind of universal about all these different things, about helping one another, caring about, pushing the boundaries of relationships, of who wins and who really loses in a war. And when you see those kind of universal humanistic themes, I wonder how people felt seeing that in the theater at the time.
If you remember in the VHS video, my favorite part is when Kikuchiyo's character basically goes after the samurai and yells at them. And in that scene, I think that's such a clever way to address all of the things you were talking about, where it's like the way you perceive your enemies, but you don't understand your enemies' side. You don't understand their motivations. You don't know what they've been going through, what drove them to this point and these decisions and these actions. And I think that's just such a beautiful scene. I mean, he's off the chain in that scene, he's throwing shit and yelling at everybody. And like, he's not actually a samurai. He is himself a peasant farmer who aspires to be a samurai. He's like trying to change his lot in life, which is against all the rules of feudal Japan. Like, you're born a farmer, you die a farmer. Like, that's it. But Kikuchiyo, he has other ideas in his mind, and it really comes around when there's that attack on the village and he rescues the kid in the water and he's crying like, it's me, and it's like, yeah, that character's motivation, that character represents so much of kind of what you were talking about just now, Stephen, in terms of like the historical animosity that could have been related to the country at the time.
The other thing I've been wrestling with is I feel like I wanted to be more attached to the characters, but then I was attached to the characters. I watched Magnificent Seven after I watched Samurai, and it was about an hour shorter, and it hits all the notes. It gives you everything you got from Samurai in like almost like cliff notes kind of a way. And I'm not trying to shortchange Seven, but I feel like having watched both, I was more connected to the samurai than the cowboys, even though I enjoyed the cowboys. But then I still had this feeling like I wanted more of the samurai, if that makes any sense. Like, Kikuchiyo steals the show. I mean, he's the man. He was like the Martin Riggs of that movie. You know what I mean? It's just funny when he had to be, deadly serious when he had to be. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of Gary Oldman in State of Grace, that intensity mixed with the Martin Riggs character. That's kind of what I took from that. So I enjoyed him very much. But then because of that, I kind of wanted more from some of the other samurai. Like the young man's got the love going on with Chino and that whole thing, and that's cool, that works. But then like the silent samurai, like the stealth killer, he was really cool. I wanted to get to know him more.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because I wanted to know more about Kyuzo and Kanbei and those characters. They seem to have a pretty interesting past, and we don't know much about them. And I read somewhere that in pre-production, each farmer's family tree had been thought out for the village. And I think that's crazy that they thought of everything that we don't see on screen. But, it feels like you have something really built. The story is really strong. And that's a kind of frustrating not having those histories and those stories to be told. But it would be a 5 hours movie for sure. So that's why maybe they had to choose what to talk about. And as Pete says in the VHS episode, I think I'm quoting you, but you say it's visually and narratively engaging. I totally agree on that too. You're carried away by all the story. You don't see the time passing by. You have a definition of each character, the farmers, the samurai. You understand all of them from the beginning. It's clear. It's not too much dialogues. That's exactly what I like. It's simple but really efficient, and that's why you don't see the time passing by. You don't have time to wondering too much because everything is said and it's fluid all along. So very well done.
With the history of the samurai, I think Kikuchiyo gets spotlighted because, again, he is a wild card and he is not a samurai. So his story is a little bit more interesting and engaging than maybe Kanbei or Kuzo. They're samurai. That's it. And so in terms of like history and their place in history and place in the world, they are warriors, and they just were part of an army, and that's it. And now they're ronins, which are warriors without a master. And that's how they all happen to come together by not having a master. I feel like you get all you need to from them based on their actions and their introductions. You know, Kanbei, he does that very noble thing in the very beginning when he shaves his head and he goes and he takes out that one bad guy, and everybody's like, holy cow, that guy just like saved this little village all by himself. Wow. And then with Kuzo, when you first see him and he's in a duel, you know, it's like you lost. Like, he's a very cut and dry character. You don't really need much more to know what he's like a no nonsense warrior.
Yeah.
Even throughout the film, it's like, oh, I'll go get him. And he just runs out into the woods and like kills 2 or 3 bad guys. Like, that's it. That's his, that's his character. That's his role. So I feel like all the other samurai, they are there. And it's just a matter of like understanding the historical context of the world that they're in. They don't have the deepness of Kikuchiyo because Kikuchiyo is from a completely different world, and he's trying to be a bridge into this world. And so that's what makes his character very dynamic and very interesting. And the fact that they let him in also speaks volumes about the samurai.
Yeah, you don't need to know more about those samurais to understand the narrative arc. But it's kind of frustrating because you get attached to those guys in a way. And for example, Kuzo, I think this guy is really impressive, and I wanted to know how he got his self-control and his weapon expertise. Their personality are so interesting that I wanted to know more about them. But I agree with you, it's not really necessary for the narrative arc. And yeah, definitely Kikuchiyo is kind of the main character of this movie. I don't know if there is really a main character, but if you need to have one, it's definitely him.
And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
Like what you were saying in the video, Pete, if this movie was made now, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but you had said something to the effect of, it's like a heist film, you know, like they're showing you, here's the map, this is the plan, blah, blah, blah. And the one thought I had while watching the film was the relationship between Kanbei and Grobe, right? The two of them, they're kind of like the buddies. It reminded me of the Brad Pitt, George Clooney relationship in the Ocean's films. Like, it's like those are the two guys who are always going around, you know.
Yeah, they're the old friends.
Right.
They know each other. They got a history that we aren't privy to, but it's there.
And they're putting the crew together. It's seemingly, this movie has a massive legacy, and it's almost like it can't be avoided because it's touched on so much. It just trickles down and you just see these themes. It's a massive legacy to have. I mean, like, to think that back in 1954, to have the level of social commentary that this film did, it's kind of cool, you know, and it's kind of it's a profound thing, I think. And also, I think it's you know, we kind of fell into a trap of the happy ending all the time, and I think to get an outside perspective sometimes is a really good thing, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I really appreciate about this movie was when you get to the ending and like, yeah, they don't all make it, but you feel something. Like, you actually feel something for those characters. You know, like, especially the very end when Kikuchiyo gets cut down, it's like you want him to make it because you want him to achieve his goals of becoming a samurai. And he does. but at a price, and in a way he is the hero, more so than Kanbei or any of the others.
Yeah, I was bummed when you see some of these samurai going down, like, no, come on. Like, but then again, I think that's part of the Americanism where it's like, we're all gonna make it. It's gonna be a happy ending. And when one of them gets cut down, it's like, fuck. Oh fuck, there goes another one. And you feel like you're losing people. Like you feel like you're on the battlefield, you're losing men. And then just that beautiful line at the end when he says, the farmers won, but we lost. That distinction is such a Japanese way of looking at things. Very clean, very succinct. And what a beautiful button to put on that. But one of the things I loved about this film, the balance of the humor against, slicing someone down off of a horse. I thought it came off really, really nice. There's those moments when Kikuchiyo's making fun of that guy, with the faces, and and then the next scene he's like screaming and swinging a sword, and it's like, and you buy it. You never once doubt for a second, and I believe him as doing the comical stuff. I believe him, with that great monologue. I believe him on the battlefield. His ass is hanging out. He's like all wet. He's fucking swinging the sword. He's screaming, and like that couldn't have been comfortable to film. But here, this guy's giving me 110%. And it reads, man. It reads. He's just running through like a crazed man. It's awesome.
I love how Kikuchiyo's sword is like a foot longer than everybody else's. Like it's not a samurai sword.
Yeah.
But he carries it over his shoulder because it's too big to attach to his hip.
It's like when Nicholson pulls out that long gun in Batman '89. Just keeps going.
But that's just like a visual cue that, okay, yeah, he's not a samurai, but he aspires to be a samurai.
And also what I like the most in this movie is the fact that in the dialogues, they're peppered with philosophic thoughts that everybody can understand. But you just listen to the dialogue and then you realize that there is a real meaning of it behind it, especially at the end, the last lines of Kanbei. It's so sad when he says, we don't really win at the end. I mean, the farmers won, but us, no. We're lonely anyway, and we're gonna go back to our life. And yeah, I don't know, it's kind of nostalgia, melancholia. I don't know if you said that, melancholic. Yeah, it's always
it's also bittersweet.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I love the way they wrote the dialogues, and of course the monologue of Kikuchiyo, and even the way it is shot. It's really impressive because quite all the movie you have wide shot, and for him it's kind of a close up, and sometimes you see the reaction of the other samurais. It's a masterpiece, really.
One thing I just thought about now, when you think of, we're talking about the cultural impact of the film, we're talking about the artistic impact of the film. And when you think about, we're talking 70 years ago, right? And even inside that film, there's some samurai who say to Kanbei, why are you doing this? Where's the monetary? What are you getting out of this? And he's just like, it's just the right thing to do, man. They explore that theme slightly more in Magnificent Seven, or that one, I forget the cowboy's name, but he's giving Yo Burn of the business. But what really, what are you getting? You're getting gold. And you're getting something. What are you getting? Yeah. And he really drives that point of what's in it for me home. And I like that they don't take it easy on the farmers. They really kind of push them, and like, you gotta do this, man. I can't do it all for you. You have to do some of it for yourself. You have to get up and rise up. And that's a good lesson I think we could even carry into today, where it's like, yeah, I can help you, I can teach you stuff, but you have to have the want to do for yourself. Otherwise this will happen again. So it's a lot of really great layered messages in there.
You touch upon one of the topics of the film, because I think they do that for honor. When the farmers are in the quest of the samurai, you see there are some samurai, they want food, money, or whatever, and for them it's just because they honor their position, their function as a samurai. I think also the movie talks about the legends of the samurai. It's like they're trying to rise from their ashes to become the hero that people thought they were a long time ago. They try to reestablish their position as samurai. So it's just for honor they're doing that, and for good. I mean, I understood that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Put a little prestige back on the name of samurai, right? Exactly. A little polish the old badge up and let it shine a little bit. I'll talk about one tiny criticism, and this is splitting hairs. This is really not that big a deal, but I think part of this criticism is from expectation. So when it comes to the battle scenes, I thought I'd see a slightly more sword battling with a little more precision. But again, that's because of the name Seven Samurai.
When you get into later samurai films, of course, that's something that became commonplace. And so you would expect it in a film called Seven Samurai. You just expect seven savages, like cutting people down. But really, I think there's more to it. And I think there's more to the term samurai that this film touches upon than popular culture has infused into our expectations of samurai. And that comes into the nobility and the honor that they carry with them.
No, absolutely. Then it didn't affect my enjoyment of the film. I mean, I obviously didn't expect John Wick, levels of fighting or anything like that, but I just thought I'd get a little more cling, 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 like little, a little more dueling to, so to speak. But again, it didn't really kill my overall enjoyment of the film.
That was something when I was first watching it, I don't know that I was expecting, but I was kind of happy that I didn't get, because what I did get gave me a new perspective on my expectations of a samurai. And, just the way like they'll just run after somebody and slash them. It's like, it's very direct form of fighting, as opposed to the over choreographed, glitzy cling clanging of Jedi lightsaber duel, like this is just very like, nope, you're my enemy. We're going at it. This is it. I'm cutting you down.
It probably, if it was a little more choreographed, it would probably lose some of the gritty luster of a real life battle.
Yeah.
In hindsight.
Yeah. Like when you go and rewatch it, I think it's something that you're going to grow to appreciate as well, especially about this particular film. It's like, yeah, it doesn't do that. It didn't meet those expectations, and I love it for that. Like it took you in a different direction that made you feel things differently, experience things differently, and think about things differently. And that's what one of my big takeaways from this film.
One of the topics I like the most in the movie is the fact that nobody is better than another. I felt that as one of the main topics, because you see that the farmers against the samurai at the beginning, there is distrust between them. And actually, you have a good example when Shino's father, he cuts his daughter's hair. It's not because he wants her to look like a man and to go for the fight. It's just because he's afraid of the samurai who could try to flirt with his daughter. So I think it says a lot about the mentality between the classes. But you understand when the samurai comes to the village that they are just human beings like the others. They eat, they get drunk, they're humans, and they understand that nobody is better than the other. And that's the same between the samurai or between the farmers. You understand that they all have, for the farmers, you understand they all have fears, and some can deal with it, others don't. You have at the beginning some they're ready to give up about their crops and everything. Others they want to die. And others have the idea to find external help. So you understand that they are the same, but they're not really, and nobody is better than another. And that's the same between the samurai. You have the prestigious one, and you have the funny one everybody mocks. But at the end, they're gonna fight all together until death for some of them. Once again, it's a proof that this movie is a real inspiration for other narrative arcs.
And I think also, when the scene when the samurai arrive, and no one comes out to greet them, and Kikuchiyo rings that bell, it's like, get your ass out here. Like we're here to help you people. And the funny thing is that they're stockpiling food, so like they're being a little shady and underhanded, and they're afraid that the samurai are going to be shady and underhanded with them. And, they're women and they're whatever. So there's an expectation on both sides. And then Kikuchiyo kind of like rings the bells, like, enough of this. Cause he's like we said, he's that guy. He's from the farming world, but trying to be in the samurai world. And he kind of is like, knock it off, get out here. And then, all right. And then they kind of learn to kind of become this little cohesive, guerrilla army, so to speak, and kind of help them defend themselves. So yeah, I think you're spot on with that analysis.
coming at it from a different period of time and a different culture. It's not like we grew up in Japan and we know all of these actors by name the way we know Brad Pitt or George Clooney or Charles Bronson or James Coburn or Steve McQueen. It is very foreign, but I feel like it is a great bridge to that world and that culture, because now you've seen it and you're like, oh, wow, what have I been missing? And you go and you maybe watch it again, or it leads you to a related film with one of these actors or one of Kurosawa's films or one of the other contemporary Japanese filmmakers. It's a great bridge to that culture, not only, in entertainment and cinematically, but also historically, and historically in terms of world history as well as cinematic history. So that again is part of its legacy and part of that tidal wave of expectation that comes along with it. Yeah, I just can't recommend it enough. And I'm very glad that you guys were open to checking it out and then discussing it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, thank you for, I've always wanted to watch it. So you gave me a reason to watch it. So I thank you for that. But, to the point you just made, I think another great thing about not knowing these guys is there's no preconceived notion of the actor. I don't know any of these guys. So there's no like, well, I don't see this guy playing this role. How's he going to pull this off? And they did, and that's kind of the great thing about experiencing an actor who's unknown, whether it be domestic or foreign, is it doesn't come with that baggage of that person. And especially in the States, unfortunately, we know everything about every celebrity's personal life, whether we want to or not. So they have all that baggage that comes with it also. So here I felt like it was a nice clean slate, a story I wasn't familiar with, or at least, until I watched it, because I didn't know what the movie was about. And then I didn't know any of these people. So I just got to dive into this world and not have to worry about any of that other noise.
Yeah, and that's one thing that really attracts me to foreign films. It's like, I just want a story. I just want a good story that's told well. I don't need all the hype and all the celebrity and all that, So a lot of times, like, foreign films will be remade domestically, and I'll usually, to the best of my ability and time, I'll try to find the origin, because it's usually a little bit more potent and it's a little bit better in a lot of ways, because it doesn't have all that glitz and glamour and baggage.
Well, I can't argue that.
I would like to add something about the fact that it's a foreign movie, because, I lived in Canada and Australia, and I had pleasure to enjoy a French movie with my friends there. And at the beginning, they were all reluctant on the fact that it's French and they don't know the actors and it's going to be different because it's a different culture and blah, blah, blah. And they used to watch American movies because it's the same language and the same kind of culture. But at the end, okay, it's not the same language, and maybe it's not the same environment, but at the end, it's a human being story, and we all have feelings. We all deal the same way, actually. Maybe we don't make the sentence the same way, or we don't show our feelings the same way, but it's the feelings that is important. And so I'm glad you enjoyed watching a foreign movie. I know you are really open-minded, and I hope this podcast will help some people listening to us to have a look at this kind of movies, because it's always a good surprise. So it's always worth it.
That will about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so be sure to head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. You can catch Stephen Bendler on Instagram over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner. Anne and I, of course, are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and see what we've been watching and check out what we think. And until next time, sayonara.